Hey, everybody. Welcome to the City of Evanston Planning Development Committee. Before we get started, we have several people signed up for item P2. I was going to suggest that we table that item, but I'd still like to hear the public comment. If I have a motion to table item P2. Sure. Well, I mean, we could discuss it. Yeah, well, we could do the comment. I appreciate that everyone's here, but first thing is to establish that we have a quorum. We do, and then I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 10th, 2020. It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Now we are public comment, and we have several residents signed up. I think we'll do the 3 minutes apiece, if that works for everybody. The first up is Roberta Hudson, then Tina Payden, Carlos Sutton, Priscilla Giles. So is Roberta Hudson here? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Roberta Hudson. I live at 1941 Dewey Avenue. Our family has been around for over 60, 70 years. We started the Foster Park Neighbors a few years back to make improvements for the community. We conducted a survey of over 400 people around the neighborhood, asking what they needed and what they were concerned about most in the Fifth Ward. And they were concerned about their children having some type of after-school program where they could learn some technology that they could either start their own jobs, own businesses, or get jobs. The developers have continued to come into our area, taking the last land that's available in our Fifth Ward, that we could do something for the community. And they're putting up high-rises that are taking up the space that we could do anything else. So where you want to have families, we wanted families to come in and have children where they can work and play and learn. We don't have that anymore. The big buildings are taking up the space for any place for kids to play. There's once they're living in buildings, there's nowhere to come out to. We have one small Gilbert Park over there. And it is our hope that the City Council will understand for once what the community's desire is, and we'll hope that you will understand why we need to keep our community free of all the high-rises in this area. We just don't need it. We have enough in the Fifth Ward, and we need more things to put together for our youth. There's nothing for them to do here, and we're losing them. We're losing families. We're losing elderly people because there's no programs to help them. They're not working anymore, and these are 100-year-old homes that need updating. And rather than helping these people who have paid tax for years in Evanston, we ignore them and we help the developers. It's really unfair. I can tell you a number of neighbors that I've talked to that need their homes, that are going to lose their homes, even today. So it is my hope that you will have an understanding of what the community wants and what they need. And we don't need high-rises.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I appreciate it. Next up, Tina, then Carlos Sutton, Priscilla Giles, and then Christopher Gottschall is after Priscilla.
Good afternoon, or evening, sorry. I'm Tina Payden at 1122 Emerson Street. We also own, my family owns the property at 1507 Emerson Street. This year will be 50 years we've had that building, and we've always rented to affordable housing. I'm here to support the creation of the R5A. along with Ms. Hudson, we do not need high rises. At one time, there was a plan for a 5-story building, 50 units. And if you do the 10% requirement for the affordable housing, that's only 5 units. Right now, Jackson and Emerson is the last that you have for affordable housing. You have passed the Albion, the E2, 1717 Ridge, and the Link. And how many units do you have for families except for this area? There's a lot of families with children. At Albion or 1717 Ridge, a single mother with 5 children is not going to live in those buildings. We're not doing enough for affordable housing, and if you let the 5-story allowance here to continue and not do the R5A, then you will allow another high-rise and eliminate affordable housing. How many units have you acquired for families for affordable housing? We really need to support R5A. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Carlos Sutton, Priscilla Giles, Christopher Gottschall, and then Thomas Ramsdell. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. Carlos, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Carlos Sutton, 5th Ward, 1821 Darrell, speaking for the Community Alliance, Neighborhood Block Club, and Friends of Gilbert Park. Occasionally, we come to this committee asking for some kind of relief to keep the existing character of our community. We are tired of the double standard that is applied to the 5th Ward, that developers and other people can come into our community and get variances that adversely affect our quality of life. I'm urging you now to approve ordinances 2902 and 3020 on the basis of this. What about the people's existing homes and property value that will be adversely affected if you do not give us this creation? We are taxpayers in this community, and we deserve the right to be heard and to keep our homes in the kind of character that we want as the neighborhood currently exists. Please do not impose upon us something that we do not want. Okay, I do not want you to deny the approval of ordinance 2902 and 3020. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Priscilla Giles, are you here? All right. Christopher Gottschall? And you'll be followed by Thomas Ramsdell and George Casil. Am I doing that close enough? All right. Welcome.
Hi, my name's Christopher Gottschall. I live at 1910 Wesley Avenue, and I'm here to ask you to please adopt the recommended R5A rezoning of our neighborhood in the 5th Ward. Our neighborhood is predominantly single-family homes, 2- and 3-story walk-ups, townhomes, and low-profile apartment buildings. It would most appropriately be zoned R4 or R3, but we realize downzoning to R3 is a lot to ask. A great compromise would be this zoning change from R5 to R5A, a small but significant step towards protecting current residents from developments like the monstrosity proposed last year by Domanis for the lots at Jackson and Emerson. Neighbors that support this downzoning are being portrayed by opponents as anti-development and anti-affordable housing. The truth is we do want development in affordable housing. We would love development of reasonable density. All we're asking is that future development reflect the current character of our neighborhood and respect reasonable limits to density, help keep it a great place to live, and protect the investment that current residents like myself have made in the area. The commissioned 2005 study determined that rezoning to R5A would more appropriately reflect the character and capacity of this area. That's why I support the adoption of the recommended rezoning and urge you to also. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thomas Ramsdell?
I will keep this under 3 minutes. I wanted to hand the members of this committee copies of documents from copies of the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting, as well as the report.
Thanks, sir.
And PowerPoint presentation that was presented there. And I'm just going to keep my comments, I'm going to keep my comments just limited to, basically to the Plan Commission proceedings. Oh, this hasn't, sorry. So, again, my name is Thomas Ramsdell, and I represent Victoria Cathrine, who owns the 7 parcels at or near the intersection of Emerson and Jackson. And my brief comments really are that, as the Plan Commission heard, Ms. Cathrine has spent 20 years and millions of dollars investing in Evanston and investing in these properties. It was her and her husband's goal to purchase them and ultimately to redevelop them. Her husband passed in 2015, and there were still 2 more parcels that they had sought to obtain. And at great expense, Ms. Cathrine, in the last year or so, has completed that purchase. So she spent 20 years compiling these properties and relying on the existing R5 classification. Now, we've already heard mentioned tonight what Ms. Cathrine refers to as a ghost developer, or the Demanis development. When she heard about those plans, with which she had no involvement and to which she never agreed, she broke the contract, and Demanis, of course, that never happened. Ms. Cathrine testified, and you'll hear again tonight briefly, at the Plan Commission that she would never sell these properties for a development to anyone who is not committed in writing by contract to develop under the existing R5 classification. So we're not here asking for a variance, and this isn't even about a variance tonight, but that concern has been raised. And so with that said, I just wanted to comment briefly also that Mr. Kissel is also here, right there with the glasses. Mr. Kissel, who is a zoning expert, has been recognized in Evanston many times. We'll talk a little bit about the loss in units, the loss in revenue, and the loss in affordable housing attendant to the proposed R5A, because it would reduce the number of units. It is a downzoning, therefore the affordability quotient. So I'm going to, again, to say that it's unfair to Ms. Cathrine to change the rules in the middle of the game. She has been relying on a zoning classification that existed since 1997 and before, but since she purchased her first property. It's simply unfair, and if you take a look at these minutes and you take a look at the comments when the discussion began, you'll really see that there are concerns about relying on a comment or in a plan that was never adopted from 2005. And the dangerous precedent of downzoning without being part of a comprehensive plan, that perhaps Evanston needs to revisit this, but this would be inappropriate to simply pick, to adopt an ordinance and a map amendment that basically singles out Ms. Cathrine without a greater study. And the Plan Commission, on those grounds, and you can read it, on those grounds, the Plan Commission voted down
Mr. Ramsdell,
1-4.
Thank you.
That's it.
I assume you're going to kind of layer these, Mr. Kissel? Or, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. You have 3 minutes.
Hope to get done in less than that. My name is George Kissel, President of Oak Rent Kissel Associates, offices in Chicago. I'm a licensed architect and certified planner. I've been before all of you and many other jurisdictions in the past. I'm going to be brief because you guys have the report in front of you as well as the minutes of the Plan Commission. I'm just going to hit generally the conclusions. First thing to realize is the R5A is indeed a downzoning. The proposed height limit reduces the development capacity of larger sites by as much as 33%. The properties that are affected by this proposed downzoning are within walking distance of downtown Evanston and near transit resources. The 2009 update to Evanston's downtown plan show the subject properties affected in the area within a quarter-mile walking zone. Downzoning a large area of land adjacent to downtown Evanston and near transit runs counter to the concept of transit-oriented development in the spirit of Evanston's comprehensive plan and more recent planning efforts. Proposed downzoning will have a negative effect on the development capacity of the affected properties, and that translates to a loss in property value and a potential loss in real estate tax revenue. The proposed reduction of about 33% could result in a loss of potential tax revenue that approaches $1.4 million annually. Finally, the proposed downzoning will have a negative effect on the ability to provide more affordable housing opportunities as mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Catherine?
Hi, my name is Victoria Catherine. I'm the owner of the 7 properties in question on the corner, basically, of Jackson and Emerson. I'll just give you a brief history. My husband, Michael Catherine, and I, we own and operated apartment buildings. We started buying there in 1997. We started in Jackson and continued to purchase. We knew what the zoning was. We purchased in a linear way, so one property, not just randomly, but one property next to another, in order in the future to develop them. He unexpectedly passed away in 2015. As my attorney noted, we still were missing 2 properties, and that was 1421 Emerson and 1921 Jackson. I purchased them knowing that I myself would not develop them, even though he and I were going to, and had actually preliminary plans in 2009 working with an architect to develop them. So I purchased those missing pieces in order to sell it to a developer. We put it on the market. It was under contract. Unbeknownst to me, the developer, Demanis, was trying to purchase other properties on Emerson and develop all of that into a 100-unit project when only 52 are allowed by law. I did not know any of that. He went to a community meeting to present his project, and of course everyone was up in arms, understandably, and he didn't want to, he walked away, leaving me with empty properties because I emptied them in order for him to start demolition. And so now I am kind of in limbo. Can't put them on the market because everyone is objecting, can't move forward, and kind of this is where I am. That's really the history of it all.
Thank you. We have 3 more speakers signed up: Jeff Masters, Amelia Masters, and Kelsey Davey. Jeff, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Jeff Masters. I live at 1918 Wesley Avenue. The properties that we're talking about are directly behind my house, as well as up on Emerson. And the original properties we're talking about 6 stories and then 5, but it's right on our backyard. If we have buildings that go up 5 and 6 stories, we're not going to see a sunrise again. When I moved into Evanston in 2006, I knew about this overlay coming in. I felt comfortable moving into a neighborhood where we could have 3.5 story. We have 3 flats that involve multiple tenants. We have single family housing. We have low income. We've got medium income. We are really pushing that as a neighborhood, and that's really attracted us to come here. I think one of my problems has been the property owners that own these properties is they have not maintained their properties or been helpful into our neighborhood. And I think some of, I don't want to make unfounded accusations, but they haven't been good neighbors. I feel strongly that we knew things were coming up in our neighborhood. I moved in the neighborhood because the tenants or the landlord, the property owners in the neighborhood had input into what the neighborhoods were going to be. We participated in that 2007 plan. Talking about what we wanted the west side of Evanston to look like. So I really feel strongly that we need to honor what has been developed before in 2005 to rezone to the 5A overlay, or at minimum redo a new study that allows community input to really see where we want to develop these neighborhoods.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ms. Masters?
So I sent you an email. I live at 1918 Wesley. I'm married to him for 40 years. We moved in here 13 years ago. It was a neighborhood. And I'm just kind of responding to the owner of those properties. And saying that she bought these in order to develop, but she's had them for 20 years, and there hasn't been an inkling of upkeep on the properties. There's been bad actors in those properties, and as far as anyone could tell, there was no help in getting those bad actors out. So I don't know how you can reward somebody for being a bad citizen for 20 years, one. The second, they talk about increased revenue, increased affordable housing, and if we downgrade, then all of that's going to be lost. But what they don't mention is the extra costs of having that density in that community and what it will cost to have, because they're not really building family homes, they are, you're talking studios, one bedrooms, not necessarily family housing. And the other point I wanted to make, yes, we believe in affordable housing, we want affordable housing, but all the affordable housing does not belong in the Fifth Ward. Thank you.
And then our final speaker tonight is Kelsey Davey. Is Kelsey Davey here? Oh, well, in that case, that concludes public comment. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let's move on to items for consideration. The first one is in my ward. So I move approval of a vacation rental license for a property that is not owner occupied at 2723 Noyes Street. Staff recommends approval of a vacation rental license that is not owner occupied for the single family residence at 2723 Noyes Street. This vacation rental meets all the standards and procedures for license approval. This is for action. Is there a second? All right. Is there Alderman Fisk?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a question for staff. In reading the material in the packet, and I may be wrong on this, if you can correct me, has this property been rented out for a number of years as vacation rental, and are we just catching this now?
That is my understanding. So this is something that hasn't quite made it back to community development. Health is still managing some of these things. So last year we obtained a software called Host Compliance. So it cultivates and goes through basically what a human being can't do in a timely manner to find the properties that are on these sites and that they're active, and then cross-correlate to see if we have, it gives us a list, and then we can say, no, there's not a vacation rental license for this. So my understanding is that this is probably one of the many properties that have been rented over the course of time prior to our better enforcement of the ordinance.
Okay, and so I guess my question is, did we catch this, or did they come to us, or how did that?
I don't know specifically what happened, but most of the properties that have been listed received letters from us direct and notifying people that the law is the law and you have to get a license, and that there was a process that they had to go through.
Have there been? I noticed that the adjacent property owners had been notified. Have we received any input from adjacent property owners?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Or if I may jump in on that. So do we send those letters somewhere that we can confirm that they've been received by the recipients? These postcards?
No, we don't.
Okay. I have two concerns. The issue that Alderman Fisk brought up, and then also this property is also on the market for sale, which is a concern of mine in terms of the long-term viability. If possible, I would like to hold this until our next meeting so we get further clarification.
I'm the property owner.
Oh, sorry.
So I can answer
Can
any
you
questions.
please answer the question that Alderman Fisk posed? Did you come to the city, or did the city come to you on?
When we first rented, we were unaware that we had to seek approval from the city. So as soon as we were made aware, we made the application and went through the process. So I apologize for not knowing. When we first looked at this, it looked like we didn't have to do that because we didn't think we were a bed and breakfast.
Okay, understood. Alderman Fisk.
I don't have any more questions for you, but I do have something that I wanted to say, which is, my general concern about this, as I've told the council before, told the committee before, is that I'm very reluctant to approve these requests when the units are not owner occupied, because I think it pushes the edge of a commercial use into a residential neighborhood, which is why I asked about if there had been any comments from neighbors.
And I'm sorry, I can address that
Okay.
too.
That's okay. I think that's part of the discussion, that why I asked the question of the chair.
And I have not heard from anybody, but I guess I wish we had a better system to confirm that people received the notice. And I'm not trying to put you in a bad spot where.
No, I understand.
But
if I can, the property is on the historic homes. It was built in 1860, and it was actually before we bought it. Had been vacant for several years, and so we fell in love with it during an estate sale and bought it and renovated it quite extensively to bring it up to code. And for the mailings, the city sent us the addresses and we mailed them out. And-
so you mail them out. You do not. Okay.
And so I did mail them out, and we sent one of the addresses was to the city planning commission, I guess, and so that was one of the mailings, so they should have hopefully received that in the mail.
Okay. So help me understand this process. Who's the return address on the notices? Is it you or is it the city?
It's the
It's
applicant.
us.
So the city has no. So did you get responses from people? I guess.
No, but our neighbors, we've talked to our neighbors before when we went in, when we first rented, again, not realizing we needed to get city approval. And the neighbors have been very supportive because we've actually improved that property over the last few years since we bought it.
No, it's a great property, and it's very unlikely to be a party house
Right.
the way that it's set up. So I understand that. Alderman Wilson.
Alderman Suffolk mentioned that it's for sale. Is this just something you're doing until you sell it, as opposed to like marketing it as a rental property?
We were originally, my parents were in North Carolina.
Okay.
It was going to be for them eventually. That decided not to happen. They fell in love with North Carolina a little bit more. So we are selling it. We actually are under contract as of yesterday, fingers crossed. So that's sort of a weird process that we're in right now. So we are in the process of selling it, and then the owners are going to be owner occupied. It won't be a rental anymore. But again, I didn't know when we were going under contract, so I wanted to make sure I was.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a question. If we were to hold this until March 9th, would that mess you up? Or
The tentative closing date is not until April. And so again, this process has been moving. I did not want to be in violation anymore.
I got you.
Because we are renting it.
So, you intend to rent it out until you vacate?
For the next 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to be on board with everything. So I hope it's not a waste of your time, but I'm following what the city told me to do.
Understood. Alderman Rainey.
This resident has taken a property that is landmark. Did you say it was a landmark?
Yes.
He's renovated it. He's brought it up to code. He's selling it. He's got a closing in April. He did what he is supposed to do. He followed the law once he knew it was a law. He's got some tenants in there until April, maybe until April. Who knows? Maybe less. Couldn't we just give him a pass and let him be a VRBO or legal whatever until then?
Well, I agree, except it's not even giving him a pass. He did what he's
It's not
supposed
a
to do.
pass. He's
Right,
done
right,
all the
yeah,
legal.
yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. I
No, I do.
don't want to table it. I think we should.
I understand.
I agree.
It's a
Yeah, let's just let him cross his T and dot his I.
unique circumstance we have here. This is not your fault or problem, but I do think.
But we didn't know those facts.
The notice,
so that's-
right?
why
Yeah, we just learned this.
That's why I thought I'd stand up.
Thanks.
And I think maybe it's probably better policy to have those notices come through the city rather than through the applicant, but you're out of here. That's not your problem. And you obviously have an interest in the property being kept up until
Right.
the end of April. So
I have a nightmare that this one can't even touch, and we're still letting them operate. So
I understand. Alderman Fisk.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's not been any representations to the new owner that they can automatically, that this use will automatically,
No, they have two small kids. They are very excited at the home. They are, one of the reasons that they're buying it is because it's the historic 1860. My understanding, they're both, one is a historic architect, so they fell in love with the house. So
Okay,
it will not be, when we sell it, this ordinance, they would have to reapply, but I cannot imagine that they would do that. They've shown no interest in doing that.
well, I just want.
The license is for the current owner. If the new people for some reason wanted to have a vacation rental license, they would have to apply for themselves.
I just want to make sure that that's communicated to them.
I will make sure that's clear as well, but they.
Well, I appreciate being here. I'm sorry we're losing you. All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alderman Fisk votes no. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Wilson, could you take item P2, please?
Okay, P2 is ordinance 29020 and 30020. It's the creation of an R5A zoning district and Emerson street map amendment. Plan Commission is recommending denial of the zoning ordinance text amendment to create the new zoning district, which is an R5A general residential and a map amendment to rezone the properties north of Emerson Street, roughly between Asbury Avenue to the east, Gilbert Park, and former Mayfair Railroad property to the west, and the block north of Foster Street to the north from the existing R5 general residential district to the new R5A zoning district. If anybody can actually follow that. So this is for introduction.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
You mentioned you were interested.
Seeing no lights, I would like to move that we table this item. Is there a second? All right. All in favor of tabling this? Any opposed? All right.
Mr. Chair, are you moving it to a date certain?
No, I believe what we want to do is table this and have somebody. Thank you. All right. So that item is tabled. There will not be a vote on this tonight. That moves us to item P3. Alderman Rainey.
Ordinance 31020, amending Title VI Cannabis Regulations. The Plan Commission and staff recommend approval of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to establish definitions and provisions for additional cannabis uses such as cannabis growers, infusers, processing organizations, transporters, etc., within the city's zoning districts. It's been written to be expansive following the Planning and Development Committee's discussion. The committee should review the list of uses and districts and consider whether they are appropriate. This is for introduction. I move approval, and I'd like to speak to it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Alderman Rainey.
Yes. I thought the staff did a really excellent job with this, and the additional zoning districts that are that are being recommended in the amendment are all special uses. So I'm not concerned because they'll all come before us, and the people who are opposed to them will come out and tell us that. If they're not being opposed, nobody will show up, and we'll be able to approve the locations. But one of the interesting things, I know I'm concerned about this because I've heard of a couple of people who are very interested in various locations which were not going to be allowed because of zoning, but the number of licenses statewide that are going to be issued are so sparse that the chance of anybody that we know getting a license, other than maybe one or two people, or teams, I guess you could call them, are so few and far between. We're not going to have to worry too much about approving locations for licenses. So just to be prepared, because those who do apply have to prove that the location, they have to have a location to apply, and they have to prove that it's zoning appropriate, even though it might be a special use. So I just want us to be prepared. So that's my argument in favor of this.
All right, is there any other discussion?
And I've also asked that the rule, I talked to Alderman Suffredin earlier about suspending the rules so that we can take action on this tonight so that it'll be equal to the other ordinance that's coming up regarding the distance.
All right, so why don't we do that? First, you're making a motion?
Okay.
to
I move suspension of the rules so we can take action
All right,
tonight.
moved and seconded, all in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, so this will be for introduction and action tonight. Now on to the underlying item, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. That brings us to items for discussion. Discussion of potential amendments to the zoning ordinance to reduce the process for variations and to clarify existing zoning regulations. Staff seeks feedback from the Planning and Development Committee on proposed text amendments to the zoning ordinance prior to preparing materials for the Plan Commission's public hearings on the matters. This is for discussion, and it is open. Yes.
So, good evening. One of the items that I've asked staff to look at over the past year is how do we make ourselves more efficient? How do we, as a community, how do we reduce staff time on items that generally come before ZBA or City Council that are approved, that are sort of the quote no-brainers of the zoning code? And this is the list that was produced. And largely, the goal here is to try to reduce the cost to residents who have to go through variance processes or other processes that might cost them money and time, architects and other potential contractors that they have to procure to do what they do, but then also reduce the load of staff time in terms of preparing memos for things that really are ultimately approved, and it's probably not the best use of staff time in terms of reviewing items, particularly as we head into our busy season. So instead of going and taking this directly to Plan Commission, we, as a staff-initiated text amendment, we wanted to come here and just get a little bit of feedback. If there are things that in this memo that we don't want to include, we can certainly not move forward with that, but these would all go to the Plan Commission, would be noticed, discussion, go through public hearings. That we just didn't want to return to Planning and Development in a few months to have them not be taken up.
Alderman Wilson.
I had taken a look at these. I think for the most part they make sense. I don't think I'm a big fan of the one with regard to the plan development extensions and requiring compliance to subsequent laws that are passed or regulations. I kind of feel like the requirement that they come back to the council and get an extension approved covers anything that might or might not come up, but to, we could change the zoning, do something completely different, and that would basically, set the project back to an entirely new approval process, and I don't think that's the intention. So I would just, maybe all of them except for that one, is my suggestion.
All right, is there any further discussion?
I'm not ready to decide.
Go forth.
Great, thank you.
All right, any items for communication? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, seconded, all in favor? Yeah, all right, let's do it. City Council should begin shortly, 7:45.